Most life-changing decisions don't start with fireworks or trumpets. Sometimes, they begin with something as small as a coin. For David Miller, that coin was a quarter. It was a rainy Sunday morning in Denver, and David sat hunched over his laptop, sipping lukewarm coffee while scrolling through an online auction site. He wasn't looking for anything serious, just browsing for odd antiques or vintage maps, the kind of things that made his history teacher heart flutter. But then, one listing froze him in his tracks. Mountain cabin, no reserve price, as is. The current bid? 25 cents. David tilted his head, squinting at the screen. That has to be a typo. He clicked the listing. The description was almost laughably vague. Old cabin in Colorado Rockies. Needs repairs. Buyer assumes all responsibility. No returns. A single blurry photo showed what looked like a dark wooden structure, half hidden by pine trees. He chuckled, shaking his head. Who sells a cabin for 25 cents? From the kitchen, his wife Emily called out, "What's so funny?" "Get this," David said, spinning the laptop around. "There's a whole cabin up for auction. And the bid's only a quarter." Emily rolled her eyes. "A cabin? More like a pile of firewood. Don't even think about it, David." But David couldn't resist. Something about the mystery tugged at him. Maybe it was his love for history, maybe it was his dream of owning a retreat in the mountains. With a grin, he clicked place bid. The site beeped. "Congratulations, you are the highest bidder." Hours passed. No one else placed a bid. By nightfall, David received the email, "You won this auction." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "You actually bought it? For a quarter?" "Technically, yes," David said, trying to sound confident. "What's the worst that could happen?" A week later, curiosity dragged them up into the Rockies to see their new property. The road was rough, winding through dense pine forests and rocky ridges. After nearly an hour of bumping along dirt trails, they found it. A lonely cabin perched on a ridge overlooking a valley where a silver river shimmered in the sun. David's breath caught. Wow! The cabin wasn't just a shack. Sure, the wood was weathered, the windows cracked, and the roof sagged, but the view was priceless. Mountains rolled endlessly into the horizon, their peaks glowing gold in the late afternoon light. Emily crossed her arms. "It's not terrible." David grinned. "See? A bargain." Inside, dust covered every surface, cobwebs dangled from the rafters, and the smell of old pine filled the air. But beneath the grime, David saw potential. A stone fireplace stood tall at the center. The floors, though creaky, were solid. And the cabin itself felt alive, as though it had stories buried within its walls. For a moment, David imagined evenings by the fire, mornings watching the sunrise over the mountains, weekends escaping the noise of the city. He had bought a dream, for 25 cents. But as he ran his fingers along the wooden beams, he felt something else. A strange unease, as if unseen eyes were watching. Emily shivered. "I don't know, David. Something about this place feels odd." He brushed it off with a laugh. "It's just the silence. We're not used to it." Still, as they drove away that night, David couldn't shake the feeling that the cabin was more than just a forgotten relic. It was hiding secrets. Secrets worth far more than a quarter. The first few weeks after David and Emily inherited their 25-cent cabin were filled with laughter, sweat, and long weekends in the mountains. Every Friday, David would toss his tool belt into the trunk of their old Subaru, and they'd make the drive up the winding dirt roads, the city shrinking behind them until it was just mountains, forest, and silence. At first, the work seemed endless. The roof leaked like a sieve. Mice had claimed the pantry as their personal kingdom. One of the windows was so warped that it didn't even close anymore. Emily teased David constantly. "So this is our glamorous mountain getaway? Drafts, leaks, and mouse droppings." David would grin and answer the same way every time, "All for a quarter. Best deal of my life." Yet little by little, they made progress. They patched the roof with new shingles, scrubbed the floors until the pine gleamed, and brought in a battered couch from a thrift store. At night, they would sit in front of the old stone fireplace, wrapped in blankets, and listen to the wind whistle outside. For Emily, the cabin became an escape from her stressful job at the hospital. For David, it was more than that. It was a project that gave him purpose. But everything changed on one chilly October afternoon. David had decided to dig a small trench behind the cabin to lay new pipes for running water. He shoveled for hours, the ground hard and stubborn. His arms ached, sweat stung his eyes, and Emily had gone inside to make coffee. Then his shovel struck something solid. Clang! At first, he thought it was just a rock. He knelt down, brushing away dirt. But soon he uncovered the edge of a metal box, rusted and heavy, its corners rounded like it had been buried for decades. "Em," he shouted, his voice echoing in the still air. "Come out here. You need to see this." Emily jogged over, wiping her hands on a rag. "What is it?" David dug frantically until the box was free. They exchanged a look, both of them holding their breath, before David pried it open with the back of his shovel. Inside, wrapped in yellowed oilcloth, were stacks of old papers, maps, surveys, and handwritten notes in fading ink. At the very bottom lay a thin folder stamped with a single word, deed. Emily's jaw dropped. "David, what is this?" David spread the papers on the porch table, his fingers trembling. The documents were nearly 150 years old, dated back to the 1800s. They described land claims, mining rights, and geological surveys that suggested the valley beneath their cabin contained veins of gold and rare minerals. David's eyes widened. This isn't just a cabin. This whole ridge, it could be sitting on millions. Emily's voice quivered between excitement and disbelief. "Are you saying we just hit the jackpot?" David laughed, but it wasn't the light laugh of a man telling a joke. It was the nervous, shaky laugh of someone who realized his life had just changed forever. Word traveled fast. They took the documents to a real estate appraiser in town. The man's face drained of color as he examined the maps. "Do you have any idea what you're sitting on? This land, this property, it's worth at least $10 million. Maybe more, depending on what's still underground." Emily gasped. David gripped the edge of his chair. $10 million. From a quarter. The appraiser leaned forward. "But listen to me carefully. If word gets out, you'll have people coming after you. Companies, lawyers, maybe even the government. Protect these papers. Don't trust anyone." That night, back at the cabin, David and Emily sat by the fireplace, the deeds spread out between them. The firelight flickered across their faces, throwing long shadows on the wooden walls. Emily whispered, "We should sell it. Cash out before something bad happens." David shook his head slowly. "No. This is ours. I found it. We're going to keep it." Emily frowned, worry creasing her forehead. "But what if someone tries to take it?" David looked into the fire, his jaw tight. "Then they'll have to go through me." Neither of them realized just how soon those words would be tested. Because out there in the dark, past the line of pine trees, someone else already knew about their discovery. And they weren't going to let David keep it without a fight. The first sign came quietly, just a letter nailed to the cabin door. It was a crisp November morning, frost clinging to the pine needles. David stepped outside, stretching, and noticed the envelope flapping in the wind. The paper was thick, the lettering official. He tore it open. "Welcome to the Pine Ridge Homeowners Association. Membership is mandatory. Please review our bylaws and rules." David frowned. "What the hell is this?" Emily, still wrapped in a blanket by the fireplace, called out, "What's wrong?" "It's some kind of HOA notice. Says we're members now." "That can't be right. I never signed anything." She walked over, reading over his shoulder. The list of rules made her laugh at first, but her smile quickly faded. No unauthorized renovations. All properties must maintain approved exterior colors. Excavation requires prior HOA approval. Mineral rights and land appreciation within HOA boundaries are considered community assets. Emily blinked. Mineral rights? Community assets? They can't do that. David crumpled the letter in his fist. The hell they can't. This is my land. I have the deed. This HOA can't just claim ownership. But by the next week, things escalated. At their first HOA meeting, David and Emily were summoned to a stuffy lodge at the base of the ridge. Dozens of neighbors sat in folding chairs, murmuring. At the front table sat 3 board members in black suits, their faces stern and expressionless. "Mr. Miller," the chairman began, his voice oily smooth. "Congratulations on your acquisition. Quite the discovery you've made." David stiffened. "How do you know about that?" The man smiled thinly. "We know everything that happens in Pine Ridge. You see, when you purchased that cabin, you purchased within our jurisdiction. And our bylaws are clear. Mineral rights fall under community ownership." Emily gasped. "That's insane. You can't just take millions of dollars of land value because of some neighborhood rulebook." The second board member leaned forward, his eyes cold. "You'd be surprised what we can do. You're outnumbered, Mr. Miller. If you fight us, we'll bury you in fines, lawsuits, and foreclosures. You'll spend years in court, and by the time it's over, you'll be broke." David's jaw tightened. "Over my dead body. This land is mine. You want it? Sue me." The room went silent. The board members exchanged looks, then the chairman smirked. "Very well. But don't say we didn't warn you." The harassment began almost immediately. A notice appeared in their mailbox, $500 fine for improper firewood stacking. The next week, $1,000 fine for unapproved window replacement. Then $5,000 fine for unauthorized excavation. Emily slammed the notices onto the kitchen table. "This is ridiculous. They're inventing rules just to drain us." David rubbed his temples. "That's the point. They want us to give up." But things turned darker. At night, strange cars idled outside the cabin, headlights off, engines rumbling. Once, David spotted a man in a black coat photographing the cabin with a long lens. Another time, Emily swore she saw someone watching from the treeline. Then came the ultimate violation. They returned from a weekend in Denver to find the front door padlocked shut, an HOA notice stapled across it, "Property closed due to safety violations." David's face turned red with fury. "They locked us out of our own home." He ripped the notice down and kicked the lock off with a single blow. The wood splintered, the door crashing open. Emily's voice trembled. "David, this is getting dangerous. They're not just fining us, they're threatening us." David stared into the cabin, fists clenched, heart hammering. "Then it's war." From that moment on, David knew the HOA wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted. But neither would he. He had bought the cabin for $250. He had uncovered its secrets with his own hands. And no board of smug, power-hungry officers was going to take it away from him. The battle lines were drawn. And the war for the cabin had only just begun. The war with the HOA didn't come with a single explosion. It came with 1,000 tiny cuts. It started with the fines. David and Emily would come home from work to find fresh envelopes taped to the cabin door. $500, unauthorized woodpile placement. $750, failure to display approved house numbers. $1,200, violation of community tranquility. Emily slammed one stack of notices onto the kitchen counter so hard the coffee mugs rattled. Community tranquility? What does that even mean? David scanned the letter, his teeth grinding. It means they'll make up anything to squeeze us. They don't care if it makes sense. Emily's voice cracked. "David, how long can we keep this up? These fines are piling up faster than we can fight them." David crumpled the notice in his fist. "We don't pay them. Not a dime." But the HOA wasn't just after money. They were after control. It began with the little things. Their mail started disappearing. Packages went missing. Twice, they found their tires mysteriously slashed in the driveway. One night, Emily woke up to the sound of gravel crunching. She peered through the curtain and froze. 2 black SUVs sat at the edge of their property, headlights off, engines idling. "David," she whispered, shaking him awake. "They're out there again." David pulled on his jacket and stormed outside with a flashlight. He shone the beam straight into the vehicles, but they didn't move. His heart pounded. He yelled, "I know who you are. Get off my land." After a long pause, The SUVs rolled backward into the trees and disappeared. When David came back inside, Emily was pale. They're trying to scare us. What if next time they don't just sit there? What if they come in? David wrapped his arms around her, but his voice was hard. Then they'll find out I don't scare easy. The harassment escalated. One morning, they woke to find their water shut off. A notice flapped on the pump. Service suspended for safety violations. A week later, their electricity was cut, a red tag nailed to the meter, unauthorized property modifications. Emily burst into tears, sitting at the kitchen table in the dark. David, they're choking us out. We can't live like this. Maybe we should sell. David slammed his fist down, rattling the plates. No. That's what they want. They think if they make life miserable enough, we'll hand it over. But this cabin is ours, Emily. We found it, we fixed it, we discovered its worth. I will not let them steal it. His anger gave him strength, but Emily's eyes were filled with fear. And what if they don't stop? What if they find another way? David stared out the window into the dark forest, the pines swaying in the wind. Then we fight harder. A few days later, the fight reached a terrifying new level. David returned from town with groceries to find the cabin door wide open. His stomach dropped. Inside, furniture was overturned, drawers ripped out, papers scattered across the floor. The chest of old deeds and maps, the proof of their land's value, was gone. Emily stood frozen in the doorway, her hands over her mouth. Oh my God, David, they were here. David's face turned crimson. He dropped the grocery bags and stormed back outside, fists clenched. He knew who had done this. No burglars would care about old mining deeds. This was the HOA. The next day, he marched into the HOA office, slamming his fists on the counter. You broke into my home. You stole my property. The board chairman leaned back in his chair, smirking. Careful, Mr. Miller. Accusations without proof can lead to consequences. David's blood boiled. You want consequences? You just declared war. The chairman's smile widened, cold and cruel. Then may the better man win. That night, David sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames. Emily sat silently beside him, tears streaking her face. The cabin, once their escape, their sanctuary, had become a battlefield. And David knew the only way out was to fight the HOA on their turf, in court. The harassment phase was over. Now came the showdown. By winter, the war with the Pine Ridge HOA had reached a boiling point. David and Emily's cabin looked like a fortress under siege. Windows boarded, locks reinforced, motion lights blazing at night. Yet no matter what they did, the harassment continued. Notices piled on their porch like snowdrifts. Fines now totaled more than $75,000, an impossible amount. Then came the letter that changed everything. The Pine Ridge Homeowners Association hereby files suit for ownership of the property known as Lot 17, Ridgecrest Cabin. Mineral rights, structures, and land value fall under Pine Ridge bylaws and are therefore subject to transfer. You are required to appear in court on March 5th. Emily dropped the letter, her face ashen. They're really going to do it. They're going to try to take everything. David picked it up, scanning the words with burning eyes. Then we'll fight them where it counts. The courtroom was packed the day of the trial. Reporters lined the benches, cameras flashed outside, and whispers filled the air. Headlines had already spread across the state. Teacher buys cabin for 25 cents. Now HA wants $10 million property. David sat stiffly at the defendant's table, his tie too tight, his knuckles white. Emily squeezed his hand under the table, her face pale but determined. Their lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Karen Lopez, stacked her files neatly and whispered, "Don't panic. We've got truth on our side. That's stronger than any bylaw." Across the room, the HOA board sat smugly in their tailored suits, their lead attorney strutting like a predator. The judge entered, and the trial began. The HOA's lawyer spoke first, pacing dramatically before the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is simple. When Mr. Miller purchased the cabin, he knowingly entered Pine Ridge jurisdiction. Our bylaws clearly state that mineral rights are communal. By digging, by profiting, he violated our agreement. He owes this land, not just to himself, but to the community he joined. He paused, letting the words sink in. If we allow this man to hoard resources, what precedent does it set? That individuals can plunder while their neighbors suffer? The HOA exists to ensure fairness. Mr. Miller is not above the law. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then it was Karen's turn. She rose slowly, her voice clear and cutting. My client purchased a cabin for $250,000. He did not sign any contract, he did not join any community willingly, and he certainly never agreed to hand over millions of dollars in mineral rights. The Pine Ridge HOA was formed decades after the original deed was established. The land's history predates their organization entirely. She slammed the rusted metal box onto the evidence table, its contents spread for all to see. These are the original deeds and claims from the 1800s. They prove this cabin, and the resources beneath it, were recognized long before the Pine Ridge HOA even existed. The board is attempting theft under the guise of governance. And we will not stand for it. Gasps echoed. Reporters scribbled furiously. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing at the HOA board. I want to see every document. The trial stretched for hours. Witnesses testified, neighbors describing harassment, experts confirming the deed's authenticity, even a historian explaining how forgotten mining claims often resurfaced centuries later. The HOA tried every tactic, claiming David endangered the community with his digging, accusing him of ignoring safety standards, even suggesting he fabricated the documents. But each accusation crumbled under cross-examination. By late afternoon, tension was razor-sharp. The judge finally raised a hand. Enough. I've heard both sides. This case will be decided tomorrow morning. The gavel struck, and the courtroom emptied into a storm of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. David and Emily slipped out the back, their lawyer at their side. Emily whispered, "What if we lose? What if they really take it all?" David looked at her, his voice firm. "Then we'll rebuild. But I don't think we're going to lose. This land was ours the moment I put that quarter down. And no one, no HOA can change that." That night, David lay awake, staring at the ceiling. He thought about the first time he saw the cabin, the glow of the valley, the treasure chest in the dirt. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. Their future, their fortune, their fight for freedom. And as snow fell quietly over the mountains, David vowed one thing. If they wanted his cabin, they'd have to drag it from his cold, dead hands. The courtroom was packed tighter than ever the next morning. Reporters jostled for position, cameras clicked like machine guns, and every seat was filled with curious locals eager to hear how the strangest case in Colorado would end. David sat at the defendant's table, Emily's hand clasped tightly in his. He could feel the sweat on his palms, his heart pounding with each tick of the courtroom clock. Their lawyer, Karen, stood poised, her expression calm but fierce. Across the aisle, the HOA board members whispered to one another, smug confidence plastered across their faces. The judge entered, robe flowing, gavel striking once. The room fell into silence. "I have reviewed the evidence," the judge began, his voice steady, authoritative. "The Pine Ridge Homeowners Association claims ownership over Mr. Miller's cabin and the mineral rights beneath it. Their argument rests on bylaws established in the late 20th century." He paused, shuffling papers. David's breath caught in his throat. "However," the judge continued, "the documents presented by Mr. Miller clearly establish original ownership dating back to the 1800s. These deeds and mining claims predate the formation of the HOA by nearly a century. Therefore, this court finds that the Pine Ridge HOA has no legal claim over Mr. Miller's property." Gasps erupted across the room. Emily's eyes filled with tears. David gripped her hands so tightly she winced, but she didn't let go. The judge raised his gavel one last time. The cabin, the land, and the mineral rights remain solely in the possession of David Miller. Case dismissed. The gavel slammed. The room exploded into chaos. Cheers from supporters, shouts of protest from the HOA board, reporters rushing forward with cameras and microphones. David and Emily stood slowly, their knees weak, the weight of months of fear and struggle finally lifting from their shoulders. They had won. Against all odds, they had beaten the HOA. But the story didn't end there. As they stepped out into the cold morning air, a man stood waiting near the courthouse steps. He was older, his face weathered by time, a battered miner's hat tucked under one arm. He held a faded photograph in his hand. "Mr. Miller?" the man asked, his voice raspy. David frowned. "Yes." The man extended the photo. It showed a younger version of himself, barely out of his teens, standing proudly in front of the same cabin. "My name's Henry Dawson. That cabin, it used to belong to my grandfather. He built it back in the late 1800s, during the gold rush." David stared at the photo, stunned. Emily leaned closer, her mouth slightly open. Henry's eyes glistened. "My family lost it when the records disappeared in a fire decades ago. I spent years trying to track it down, but I never thought I'd see it again." He smiled faintly. "Then I saw your story on the news. I had to come. I had to tell you." David swallowed hard. "So, this land, it was his dream too?" Henry nodded. "He used to say the cabin wasn't about the gold, or the land, or the money. It was about freedom. About building something with your own two hands and knowing it was yours." For the first time since the ordeal began, David felt a lump in his throat. He looked at Emily, who gave him a small, tearful smile. David turned back to Henry and pressed the photograph into his hand. "Then I promise you this, I'll take care of it. Not just for me, not just for Emily, but for your grandfather too. His legacy lives on through us." Henry's eyes misted. He dipped his hat. "Then you're the right man for it, son." That evening, David and Emily returned to the cabin. The sun was setting over the Rockies, painting the sky in streaks of orange and violet. They stood on the porch, holding each other, watching the light fade over the valley. The cabin was quiet, peaceful once again. Their fight was over. David whispered, "All this, from a quarter." Emily rested her head on his shoulder. "Worth every penny." And though the land beneath them held unimaginable wealth, David knew the true treasure wasn't gold, or deeds, or even victory over the HOA. It was freedom. And he would never let anyone take it away again.